Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum. And it is absolutely heartening to see a house full on a Sunday afternoon, which is probably indicative of your commitment to this very critical, important initiative. When I walked into the hotel this morning, there was this person, this lady standing there, and I asked her कि Ikram Sehgal साहब का event कहाँ हो रहा है? And she looked at me, she had no clue who Ikram Sehgal साहब was, but she said, वो आम आदमी वाला. मैंने कहा जी, वो आम आदमी वाला. And I think that is the buzzword. That's what it's become. And then, of course, I've been a very small, I can't even call myself a part of it. I'm a very small observer of it in the sense that I was in Davos, where it was formally introduced and launched to the financial gurus of our country, and all of them had endorsed it. And some of us had very critical questions. So in that meeting, another thing that became very interesting was कि जो critical सवाल हैं वो उर्दू में कर लें. So that is something that has stayed with me. But I also asked a lot of critical questions, and a lot of people, and interestingly, all of them, Ms. Seema Kamil has joined us. Thank you for being here. So we asked a lot of critical questions, worked on it, improved on it, and here it is where you're seeing the commercials on the television. Why is it so critical? It is critical because 80% population of Pakistan is out of the banking circuit. 80%. And that is something that must be addressed. We are a nation of talkers. So we started talking about this way back. We started talking about this in the 1990s. Pakistan is one of the first countries which talked about microfinance banking, branchless. In fact, also introduced branchless banking pretty early, but just taking it to the doorstep of the AAM ADMI is something that has finally happened after a lot of red tapeism, bureaucratic hums, the legality of it, all of that. But finally, we've been able to do it. And I think this is a proud day, because Ikram Sehgal Saab and his family has worked tirelessly for it, invested in it, and today it has happened. So I would want to start this event by giving them a hand. And also a confession, I am not a financial person. I'm an IR person. I don't even know how my own bank account works. But I was very, very impressed with all of that it would do. Because you see, we talk about a lot of things. We've been talking about documentation of economy. We've been talking about financial inclusivity. We've been talking about good monetary governance. All of these need steps to be taken on the ground. Just talking about it and then they becoming your buzzwords in your conversations that you have with international organizations is not going to take us anywhere. So there was this huge vacuum that existed between what we were saying, what we were trying to do, and what was not actually happening. So I think this is a critical step in which the fact remains that this is going to go to the AAM ADMI. AAM ADMI ka wallet, AAM ADMI ka bank account. 5 small steps and you have a bank account. ये सब तो है, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ और कितनी ज़्यादा चीज़ें हैं जो हम रो रहे हैं कि डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऑफ इकोनॉमी हो जाए, जो हम रो रहे हैं कि इंक्लूसिविटी हो जाए और नहीं हो पाती. This will make it happen, and make it happen very quickly. So it was about bringing together entities that were working in silos and create this very critical triangular nexus to make it happen. And I think that is what we are celebrating today. I'll have more things to say, but there are other people who know more about it. By the way, I wrote something about it today in Bowl News. It's come out. And it is a layman's view of what it is. But despite that, I have received a lot of inquiries and people calling. So I think this is creating a buzz, and we need to carry it forward. And all of you here are the multipliers for this buzz. So with that, I'd like to invite Zarar Sehgal Saab, co-chairman of Pathfinder Group and the VRG, and he will have more important things to say about it. So Zarar, it's over to you.
आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट स्कीम 13 बैंकों और VRG की मुश्तरका काविशों से तश्कील दी गई है। इस स्कीम के ज़रिए आप ना सिर्फ अपना अकाउंट खोल सकते हैं, बल्कि अपना मौजूदा अकाउंट आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट स्कीम के ज़रिए इस्तेमाल भी कर सकते हैं। ना सिर्फ ये, रकम भेजना और वसूल करना, मोबाइल बैलेंस और बिल की अदायगी भी कर सकते हैं। *2262# डायल करें और अपनी पसंद के बैंक का इंतखाब करके अपना शनाख्ती कार्ड नंबर और तारीख़ इजरा फराम करके आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट खुलवा सकते हैं। अब आप भी पाकिस्तान के किसी भी कोने से, किसी भी नेटवर्क से और किसी भी फ़ोन से आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट खुलवा सकते हैं। आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट, आपका इख्तियार।
Thank you very much, Dr. Bakai, for the introduction. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome on behalf of VRG, the Pathfinder Group, and the Sehgal family. I'd like to obviously commend our chief guests over here. Thank you very much for joining us on this auspicious occasion. Thank you for all the guests for coming. I share Dr. Bakai's view. For you to commit on a Sunday, which is a family day, a personal day, for everybody to come here and spend your time with us. We mean it from the bottom of our heart. It's truly heartening to see. And what a moment, not just for our organization, but really for the whole country, when you think about it. We talk about democratic freedom, we talk about the right to vote, but I can tell you, those rights are meaningless without financial freedom. If the person voting is beholden financially to somebody else, it's not a real democracy. You're really talking about people who are beholden to other people and vote a certain way. The Asaan Mobile Account is the first step towards financial freedom for the people of Pakistan. An unbanked population which exceeds 80%, majority of that which are women, which means they're not in the financial net, Pakistan. Thanks to the effort of the State Bank of Pakistan, the PTA, there are many initiatives now in place now to push this unbanked part of Pakistan into the banking system. And it's not just a Pakistani problem, just to take a step back. The UN estimates there are about 3 billion people in the world that are not part of the financial net because either lack of documentation, either because the banking technology is not there, documentation problems. But what people do have is a mobile device. More than 80%, 85% of Pakistanis have a mobile device now. And that is where the genesis of this idea was born. From our family, from VRG, from the Pathfinder Group, we thought, let's use this instrument to give the AAM ADMI their AZAADI, their financial freedom. And that's where VRG first started, and has led to the Asaan Mobile Account. You can see the numbers up there. They keep flashing. Just last night, we opened up 200,000 accounts were opened up in one night. So you can see. The penetration, the advertising campaign, and I do want to thank the State Bank in particular, and obviously Dr. Seema Kamil is up here, so obviously special thanks to her, but to the whole State Bank team. Whole State Bank team. I want to thank the whole State Bank team, including obviously Raza Bakar, who was there previously and is there today, for their support in this program, because it's not easy. It's not easy to have. There are a lot of fintechs in Pakistan, and I wish them well, but to have an entity that is regulated both by the State Bank and the PTA, you can just imagine what it takes to work that entity, to run that entity, and for that entity to succeed now. But we are here now. This is, some would call it the beginning. For my family, it's been a long journey. It's been a long and tough journey at times with a lot of doubts. But I think the one man who's sitting on the stage, Ikram Sehgal, had no doubts, never in doubt. You know, there was this famous saying about Napoleon. You know, sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. And I think that can equally apply to my father as well. And that lack of doubt is actually in his vision has led to us being over here. So with that, again, I thank you. I am very grateful for all your support over here. Thank you very much, and I turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, I'm Amir Ibrahim, the CEO of Jazz. सबसे पहले जश्न आज़ादी मुबारक हो। आज जो हम फंक्शन इधर सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं वो है आमा अकाउंट की सेलिब्रेशन और लॉन्च, एंड नाउ आई एम बीइंग टोल्ड दे हैव अबाउट 4.2 मिलियन अकाउंट होल्डर्स ऑल्सो। सो ये बड़ी खुश आइन बात है कि पाकिस्तान में इकराम सहगल जैसे लोग मौजूद हैं जो कि आम आवाम के बारे में सोचते हैं। डिस्पाइट ऑल द प्रोग्रेस वी हैव मेड इन मैनी एरियाज़, फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन जो है एक ऐसा एरिया जिसमें हम अभी तक पीछे हैं। और डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट दैट जैज़ कैश कुड बी अ परसीव्ड कंपेटिटर फॉर आमा, व्हेन इकराम सहगल रीच्ड आउट टू मी आई सेड आई डोंट केयर अबाउट कंपटीशन बिकॉज हमारा कॉमन गोल है, और हमारा कॉमन गोल ये है कि हम हर पाकिस्तानी को फाइनेंशियल प्रोडक्ट्स की जो सहूलत है उससे महरूम नहीं रख सकते। So I am delighted that we have partnered with them. Ikram Saab is a great guy. Pathfinder Group has been making contributions in Pakistan for a very long time. And now with VRG, we are very hopeful that this AMA account will see bigger and bigger successes in days to come.
जी, आम आदमी की आज़ादी वो तो अच्छी बात है, उसके लिए हम सब कोशिश और काविश करते हैं, लेकिन सब लोग यही कहते हैं कि असल आज़ादी और ख़ुद मुख्तारी माशी आज़ादी और माशी ख़ुद मुख्तारी के साथ जुड़ी हुई है। और आज जो पाकिस्तान के इकनॉमिक वोज़ हैं वो भी शायद हमारी माशी मुश्किलात के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। सो देयर वाज अ गूगल कमीशन्ड रिपोर्ट टाइटल्ड Unlocking Pakistan's Digital Potential, which says that digital transformation can help Pakistan unlock up to rupees 19.7 trillion, $59.7 billion in annual economic value by 2030. Now, what is that? It is equivalent to about 19% of country's GDP in 2020. This is the potential, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about AAM ADMI. It's about all of us. It is about this country. And with that, I will invite Salman Ali Saab, who's the CEO of VRG, to make us wise with his words of wisdom.
Thank you, Uma. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to everyone, and especially to our chief guest. AMA scheme. 4 years, hard work, lots of ups and downs. The major thing I must say about only this scheme, that this scheme is being launched with the collaboration of all the banks and all the telcos. Good. But what we have achieved, before going to this, what we have achieved, let me tell you that I'm a very fond of a soccer player of soccer. So there's a player called Pele. He says that success is not accident. There's no accident like success. You have to do hard work. You have to do sacrifices, compromises. And by the help of this, you have to achieve something which is long lasting and which is always be with you. So here it is, that is AMA scheme. So let me show you that what we have achieved as in telcos, with the banks and with VRG, what we have achieved till now from the AMA scheme. A very quick one. For the first time in Pakistan and in Asia, we have implemented a many-to-many model where we have all the telecom operators and all the all the financial institutions as well. Just think about this implementation, that any person using any SIM can open up any account in any bank with just within 1 second, within 1 minute. My major thing is to say that you guys have done it, not VRG. We all together have done it. And this has been recognized by the World Economic Forum and also by Queen Maxima in the World Economic Forum during her speech. Right now, this model is under evaluation in different developing countries. And these developing countries are also contacting VRG to have this implementation done in different parts of the world. So this is, I'm telling you that this is all you guys have done. So let's move on some quick stats that what we have achieved up till now. This is very interesting, by the way. The next slide, please. Wow. So by 31st July, we are able to secure some good amounts of numbers. Obviously, there are some good players. There are some players who are catching up. But let me tell you one thing, that is, I personally want to thank you, some people over some institutions who actually handhold me when we have started this journey 4 years back. Thanks to Jazz, thanks to HBL, thanks to UBL and Bengal Falah, that these people, these institutions came to us and handhold us and take this thing forward, like from the POCs, to get these things up and running and make this thing possible so that others can attract and come over and join this show. So I'm really thankful to the people. Amir, thank you very much. Abrar Saab, thank you very much. Like Adnan, thank you very much for this. Nasir Saab. Moving towards, we have another slide, that is the next one, and that is the account linked. This means a person can already, their existing account can be linked. So again, we have seen a very good number by these players, and other players are catching up. A very significant figure, at least for the VRG as a starting company, and this is in this arena, that is like we've been live since last, you can say, hardly a year on this project. So we have achieved nearly 41 billion landmark on the financial transactions number. So this is again something which we have achieved with your collaborations. We have, the next slide please, we have a very important thing, that out of the, how many transactions we have been taking place, we have nearly around on an average 30% financial transactions taking place, which is very good number with respect to the branchless banking industry. We have the gurus here from the branchless banking industry who knows these stats very well. But let me show you a very interesting thing now, and that is the analytics. Up till now, this AMA scheme, like we have nearly around 4.5 million accounts, and out of these 4.5 million accounts, as we speak today, 32% accounts are the women accounts, which has never been done in Pakistan earlier. So this is something which we have achieved through this scheme. But if you can see these stats, like we have a very, very good things coming up from KPK as well. If you see the numbers in the KPK, that is in the percentages, it is a very good number which is coming from the KPK, and especially from the women's side. Next slide, please. As a countrywide transaction gender-based distribution, you can see we have a very good number in the female and in the males as well. So the main point is that this scheme is being adopted by that AAM ADMI, that person who's sitting at home and using this scheme without going to any bank branch or any agent as well. And these are the numbers which clearly shows that these are the percentages from those, in fact, provinces. And especially if you see, there is some traction in the Balochistan as well. So these are the areas which we need to, take care of. Another slide with respect to the province-wide distribution, we have, if you can see, transactions by females. Now these transaction numbers, especially from the KPK and Balochistan, are quite good. We are collecting this data, but let me tell you, this is the last slide I want to show you guys. The next slide, please. The accounts has been opened, and again, these are just link accounts. These are just open, fresh accounts. If you can see these accounts have been open, and like female account percentages are 49.3%. This dropped down because when you link the account and take the whole total, then it's dropped down to 32%. But let's see that these are the numbers which we have achieved, which never been achieved from any scheme initially. I just want to say a few words about this scheme. Like we have started this scheme, now we all have to say that this scheme has been launched, but this is just a start, it's not the end. We have to build multiple use cases. We have to build some interesting use cases like instant credit, like micro insurances, like micro retail payments. And above them all, we have to increase touch points for those people and for that we have to work on agent interoperability to increase the touch point, which actually benefits the BISP and the SRS program as well. We are already in talks with those entities, and we need your collaborations. Last but not the least, I personally say that this scheme is our success, yes. I do believe that this is our success. But yes, all the decision makers are here, but what about the executors? What about the team who actually executes it? So the teams who actually worked on it, who actually developed this thing, who actually make it operational on the institutional side, on the VRG side, I want to congratulate all the people over there, right? Thank you very much for growing this thing for us. And before leaving this ashram, let me share with you some of my personal feelings today. This ashram needs to be shared. This ashram needs to be shared today. And the person who actually, the main brain behind, the technical brain behind this whole scheme, who is actually running this show, who is actually creating all the products, whenever I just call him and say, this is my business requirement, and ho jayega? Yes, ho jayega. And that person is right now missing in this arena. So, Mr. Alisha Asani, you are equally, welcome, and you are equally missed here. And because of you, we have made this agreement. Thank you very much, guys.
पैसे ना हो तो कोई परेशानी नहीं, क्योंकि मैं अदायगी करती हूँ आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट से।
Thank you, Salman, for those fantastic figures. They were very heartening. Celebrations are great, but before we have celebrations and before we reach the point of celebrations, there's a lot of hard work, disappointments, frustrations, sweat and blood. And then finally, you are able to achieve what has happened today, or what we are celebrating today. Just to remind, I'm sure all of you know this here, but Pakistan initiated its National Financial Inclusion Strategy in 2015. That is where we finally, the policymakers, the doers, people in corridors of power and on decision-making tables decided that this is where the future lies. And this was, of course, linked to the concept of knowledge economy. They said, if you want knowledge economy, if it is going to take us forward, then we need a financial inclusion strategy, which came in 2015. We are in 2022. It's not so bad. Only if we can carry it forward, we have ownership for it and the commitment. And that ownership and commitment seems to be there because, like I said earlier, there is a triangular nexus that allowed this to become a reality. One important side was, of course, the PTA. And we are honored to have Major General Azim Bajwa, Chairman PTA, who's going to speak to us through a video link.
Governor, State Bank of Pakistan, Deputy Governor, Chairman Pathfinder Group, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, industry leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. I'm honored to be a part of this gathering to commemorate the launch of Asaan Mobile Account scheme, which is expected to revolutionize the mobile banking landscape. At the outset, I would like to congratulate VRG and all other stakeholders on the successful commercial launch of AAM scheme. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's financial inclusion rate is lagging in regional and global terms. According to Global Findex 2021, only 21% of adults of Pakistan have bank account ownership compared to an average of 71% in developing countries. Adoption of financial services in Pakistan is mostly for making digital payments, and as such, access to savings or credits solutions is very limited. Women account ownership of 13% is still less than half of the men's account ownership. Despite significant improvement through Asas Kafalat Cash Transfer Program, which covers over 8 million women. According to Pakistan's Bureau of Statistics, 93% of Pakistani households have mobile phone ownership, which shows a great potential for mobile-based digital payments and other financial services to the unbanked. Collaborative efforts of mobile operators and banks have increased mobile banking accounts by 114% from 37 million in December 2017 to 79 million in December 2021, although not all accounts are active. There is a strong need to make efforts to take this journey further to include the unbanked population in the financial system and help them adopt digital payments. AAMA is a unique model where two leading regulators, PTA and State Bank of Pakistan, joined hands, developed a regulatory framework for this scheme, and issued joint license to cater for huge unbanked population in Pakistan. PTA has made concerted efforts to facilitate VRG and integrated systems with all CMOs. With the joint efforts of State Bank of Pakistan, PTA, VRG, mobile operators and banks, today we have AAMA scheme that is fully operational with great potential of contributing towards digital financial inclusion of common citizens and reducing gender gap. Ladies and gentlemen, Government of Pakistan envisioned digital financial services through National Financial Inclusion Strategy, with the game changers are the fintechs. However, the fintechs could only penetrate with the active participation of telecom players. PTA, being telecom sector regulator, is ensuring the accessibility and availability of the telecom services across the country. We have joined hands with State Bank of Pakistan while supporting and assisting in developing the digital financial services ecosystem in the country. Just to give you a brief overview of the current state today, we have over 195 million biometrically verified SIMs and subscribers with mobile coverage to over 89% of the population. We have 119 million broadband subscribers with availability of 3G and 4G mobile signals coverage to more than 77% of the population. Mobile operators' widespread distribution network across country has resulted in over 150,000 retailers of mobile operators, which enabled fintechs and banks to open 79 million M-Wallet accounts and over 587,000 M-Wallet agents. For identification and digital onboarding of customers, we have integrated the systems of Pakistan Mobile Network Portability Database and mobile operators with the banks, and also implementing multi-finger verification for SIM issuance. For the low-cost device ecosystem, the implementation of PTA's Device Identification, Registration and Blocking, or DIRBs, in 2019 has also resulted in significant increase in legal import of mobile devices and establishment of over 33 local assembly plants in Pakistan. We have locally produced over 64 million mobile devices, including 4G smartphones, since implementation of the system. According to GSMA, the gender gap in internet awareness in Pakistan has declined from 16% to 11%, and PTA is committed to ensure access to all and improve gender inclusion in ICTs in Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, under the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, PTA remains committed to strengthen the digital ecosystem for payments and financial inclusion in Pakistan. In this regard, AAMA scheme will play a pivotal role in women's economic empowerment through improving their socio-economic status in the country. With significant population of Pakistan being unbanked, the AAMA scheme will go a long way, as ubiquitous financial services will now be available and accessible to a huge market of over 195 million biometrically verified SIMs and subscribers. The AAMA scheme was designed with the objective to provide easy, swift, secure and cost-effective channel for accessing financial services with complete interoperability amongst operators and financial institutions. I am confident that the scheme will achieve the broader objectives of financial inclusion in the country, which is at the heart of all efforts of government for a growing, stable and documented economy. I once again congratulate all the stakeholders on the launch of AAMA scheme. I thank you all.
We have another video message by a very important person, and that is Mr. Shehzad Dada, who's the president of UBL. But just to share a small nugget of information with you, Pakistan's population, we all know, is now exceeding 220 million. Pakistan is an emerging mobile economy country and boasts a high mobile phone penetration of 85%. And there's a global consensus that in countries where the infrastructure is poor or in some cases non-existent, this is the way forward. So Pakistan is catching up, but we are still way behind. If I may also quote this here, the numbers that we have. So as per the most recent Financial Inclusion Insight Survey 2020, top-line financial inclusion in Pakistan is estimated at 21%, expanding 7 percentage points since the last two waves was conducted, which is in 2017. It is still significantly low in our country, because when we compare it with similar economies, for example, India's profile is 78%, and Bangladesh, which is more comparable, is 47%. There is no way we can let go of using this 85% mobile penetration and convert it and make it a part of our financial inclusion strategy. And I'm sure that there is complete consensus in the room and elsewhere about it. I will now request the organizers to play the video message of Mr. Shehzad Dada, who couldn't join us personally because of his other commitments.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I really wanted to be there in person with all of you, but unfortunately, given the change of date of this event and my travel plans, I will be unable to. Before I share a brief thoughts, I just wanted to share some key statistics with all of you. One, 70% of our population is under the age of 35. We have the highest tele density in the region at 85%, yet only 80% of our population is banked. While I do realize the challenges that we have on banking the remaining population, including the lack of documentation available and including the lack of availability of internet and smartphones with the user base. Asaan Mobile Account is indeed the solution to these challenges. And for that, I would like to congratulate Ikram Saigal Saab, Zarar, Pathfinder and VRG for taking this important initiative, and also congratulate them on today's AAM ADMI KI AZAADI inauguration event. They worked tirelessly with all the stakeholders, including State Bank of Pakistan, PTA, NADRA, World Bank, and the participating banks to ensure that this becomes a success. And based on that, they have been able to open almost 3.5 million accounts, expected to grow to 50 million. As UBL, we are very proud to be partnering with them, and we are very much determined to help them achieve their goals, because it helps the overall cause of financial inclusion, which is something very near and dear to our purpose, and I'm looking forward on working more closely with them. Let me end my message by simply asking all of you who are not already an AMA account holder, take out your phone, dial *2262# and become part of the AMA family and change agent in the financial inclusion agenda that this group is tirelessly working on. With that, Khuda Hafiz, Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you very much.
अब कैश से जान छुड़वाओ, आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट खुलवाओ।
You see, interestingly, my students, all of them are now wanting to have these accounts, and I was very surprised, because I don't know if there were a target audience, and I'll ask the people here, but a lot of students, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20-year-olds are doing it. Another president of a bank here, President U Bank, Kabir Naqvi Saab.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, Mr. Ikram Saigal, DG Seema, Raza Bakar Saab, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to all of you from my side. I'm very happy to be here today. I will take the first 5 minutes to just develop some perspective as to how did we get here from a practitioner's point of view. And today we are talking about AMA, which is a telco agnostic and bank agnostic mobile wallet, but the journey started many years back in 2007, 2008, when the central bank took a very brave decision of launching the first bank-led branchless banking model in the world. I was part of the team that indulged into this whole process of branchless banking and offering services outside of the brick and mortar setup. I was part of Tamir Bank. Nadeem was here, he just left. And Telenor and Tamir Bank, we started this service in 2009, and the name is a household name now, followed by Jazz, Ali sitting here, and UPESA, which is a brand that we have with our sister concern, Ufone. Now, initially, we went with a super agency agreement because initially there was no blueprint. Either we had to go with a service level agreement, who will own the customer, where will the revenue be parked. So there were a lot of kinks, taxation issues that had to be solved, because this was the first time this was happening anywhere in the world. Now, nearly 14 years down, I'm very happy to be here, and I would really want to congratulate State Bank, PTA, Pathfinder Group, and all of you that we are seeing a solution finally, which is not a one-to-one model, which is a many-to-many model, and which is completely customer-centric. So this is one area that we took more than a decade, 1.5 decades to be precise. Now, from here on, you people, I'm sure many of you indulge into these wallet business, you know, many of us have different wallets on apps and USSDs. I would want to touch upon the distinction between a wallet on an app and a wallet through a USSD string. And as smartphone penetration is increasing in Pakistan, which it is, the general perception is that with the smartphone penetration, you will be totally telco agnostic and you can open any service wallet on your app. Now, I'll share my personal experience with you because I work for a microfinance bank and I do around 6,000-7,000 road miles every quarter. Last week I was in Nagar Parkar, Chor and other areas, and for 3 days I was struggling with service. Obviously, and there were rains also and the towers and patrol issues. Many issues are going on in the country nowadays especially. So how do you actually get people on board onto this beautiful railroad that we've made, and how will people use it and what will they do with it? That's the natural next question. Many people argue that the days of the USSD are over. In my view as a practitioner, when we talk to our customers, when we see our data, it's not true. In my personal view, USSD is going to stay and for a long time. Now that brings me to my next argument or concern or statement, whatever you may want to call it. Raza Bakar Saab is sitting here 3 years back, maybe he remembers, in a meeting, Ikram Sehgal Saab and myself, we were there, and it was early days for AMA launch and we were doing the pilot. And we said, you know, eventually, if you look at the regime in which the accounts are being opened, level 0, level 1, level 2, when we graduate to level 2 mobile wallet on AMA, which has higher limits and you can do many more things, and regular customers can actually use this as a regular bank account, not just with a smaller limit or fewer transactions, that is where the real volumes are going to come in. And obviously it had to be a journey. And 3 years down, mashallah, we are there. And the natural graduation would be, you know, if we are able to provide credit, savings products, and other banking services. Another point that I would really want to touch upon here, which is very close to my heart, is the why part. Why are we opening these wallets? Why do we want more wallets? How many of these wallets, once when they're opened, stay active? What is the definition of an active wallet? What is the value proposition for the person that we are trying to bring into the financial net? You know, many people say that financial inclusion or digitization, you know, could even, you know, it's borderline buzzword as well, which I don't agree with. But what is the reason why we're investing millions of dollars and people are spending time, regulators are spending their time, effort, and globally we have very good examples, but in the Pakistani context, as Shahzad was mentioning in his message, that 65% plus people are less than the age of 34, but 26.6 million children are out of school. The education level, financial literacy, when you go down in the field where the rubber meets the road, you see the real landscape, you see the real story. And this is what I wanted to bring into this hall in Marriott today, what I saw in my recent trip also, which I see every quarter, as to what the reality is out there. So a lot of work needs to be done on financial literacy. That's why the brick and mortar and digitization are not mutually exclusive in my view. They go hand in hand in a country like Pakistan. Because bulk of the brick and mortar branches are in the higher cities, tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities. What we are trying to do in our institution as well, we're trying to go to the last mile as much as possible. And that has its own issues. It's very expensive also, yes. But eventually, when we hit critical mass, it's going to serve the purpose that we are looking for. So these are a few thoughts that I wanted to leave everybody with today. While it's a great time, mashallah. You know, we've got this whole business of wallets booming in Pakistan. We've got millions of mobile wallets. We've got real use cases kicking in. We are into nano credits, other stuff as well. But at the end of the day, when you look at a client-centric approach, when you think about what does a 26-year-old boy or a girl in Dadu city with a mobile phone, with a feature phone, do with, say, per se, an AMA account, that is where the thinking needs to go eventually for product development, for usage. So the railroad is there, it's out there, the regulation is there, the risks have been identified, it's been laid out, the mobile wallets are being opened, yes. But now from here, the real challenge, and again, as I said in the beginning, this is the practitioner's view. When you hook people onto these wallets, what do they do with this wallet? And what do we do with the savings that we acquire onto these wallets as banks? Because there is a full loop that needs to be considered for the value proposition. And in the end, I would just want to give you an analogy, an example that I usually share with people. I read somewhere a few years ago that one of the companies had digitized a biryani stall in Lahore somewhere. And people were very happy that this person through a QR code is accepting payments, and we have digitized it. And so the person would collect cash and then take the cash home, and and then we had digitized the whole process, which is great. The person was making 1 deg or 2 degs of biryani a day, and after collecting payments digitally, most likely he was still making 1 deg or 2 degs of biryani, and efficiently collecting cash. So efficient collection of cash through a digital railroad is, in my personal view, a huge part of transformation, but not the entire thing. What if we use the data that we acquired on the wallet and then offered credit to the biryani chap so he could do 10 days and then increase productivity and the income levels and graduate him to a shop? So this is where it has to go, and payments and credit needs to be looked at from a different lens, because we lend to the masses unsecured via income proxies. It's a different world out there. When you're talking about transformation of lives, you have to talk about providing unsecured credit. And that is a longer journey, that is a risky journey. Capital is involved, risk is involved, but this is where we ought to go as an industry. So these are my few thoughts, and I would once again want to congratulate Ikram Saab and everybody on stage and in the audience. Thank you very much.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी। किसी भी इकोनॉमी की आज़ादी के लिए और उसकी एफिशिएंसी लाने के लिए फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है, और एमा जो रोल प्ले कर रहा है फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन को इंक्रीज़ करने के लिए पाकिस्तान में, आई थिंक वो एक बहुत ही इनक्रेडिबल चीज़ है। और असल आज़ादी जो है, आज 14 अगस्त है, और असल आज़ादी पाकिस्तानियों की उसी वक्त होगी कि वो घर बैठे अपना अकाउंट खुलवा सकें, घर बैठे फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शंस कर सकें। वी हैव कम अ लॉन्ग वे, बट वी हैव अ लॉन्ग वे टू गो, एंड आई थिंक कंपनीज़ लाइक एमा विल प्ले अ बिग रोल पाकिस्तान को उस जगह पहुँचाने के लिए जहाँ हम जाना चाहते हैं और डिज़र्व करते हैं। थैंक यू।
A practitioner's view is critically important. But there are also some facts that we should probably look at and see that have we made the kind of progress we should have made, or it's time that we pull up our socks and roll our sleeves and actually get things going. Because if you look at how financial inclusion has worked in Pakistan, it was a national priority for Pakistan way before many other countries adopted it, because the support for the microfinance sector dates to the 1990s, and in 2001 the government began to allow the creation of microfinance banks. We were one of the first countries to adopt branchless banking regulations in 2008, which of course paved the way for introducing digital financial services in the country. The Benazir income support program in 2010, the government began to digitize safety net support for 6 million poor households through women, and of course inclusivity comes in. The SRS program is again through mobile digitalization, financial inclusivity. I just wonder that have we explored its potential, or there's a lot more that needs to be done? And I think somebody who can really talk about here is Mr. Ali Nasir Sahab, who is the CBO of Jazz. He's going to talk about what mobile phone does for us.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Ikram Sahab, distinguished guests, leadership of VRG, thank you so much for inviting myself and Jazz today to be a part of this function. This is not just a commercial offering. I think this is a big service to Pakistan, and as you've seen through some of the stats that Salman has shared and the journey that Kabir has talked about, this is a big milestone in that journey. I'm not going to bore you with stats. I think Salman's done a great job of that. But let me just say that the number that only 21% of the population is banked, and the fact that the number of women are less than half, is hugely problematic. Not only is it a fundamental right for every Pakistani, every human being for that matter, to be part of this financial system, but I can assure you it's holding Pakistan back. It's holding Pakistan back in its progress, and it's something that needs to be done. The sad part is that this is not rocket science. This is happening all over the world. Dr. Bakai talked about the NFIS, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, that was put out in 2015. But sadly, due to the political uncertainty and the economic turmoil that we've been experiencing, a lot of what is in that document still remains to be implemented. However, I think the last few years, and we've got two protagonists, Dr. Raza Bakir and Simi Kamil on stage, who've been very, very supportive of moving this digital agenda forward. Rast, I think, has been a spectacular success, and Asaan Mobile Account, and I'll talk a bit more about that later, is a step in the right direction. As I said, this is not rocket science. Kabir's talked about a different dimension of not every person is going to be owning a smartphone, not every person is going to be going to a bricks and mortar bank, not every person is going to be just using an SSD. I think the objective should be that we should have enough variety and diversity in our financial instruments that they can appeal to every Pakistani. And AMA is a significant step forward, especially for the AAM ADMI, because of its use, its ease, its convenience. I'll share a very personal anecdote, Ikram Sahab, if you permit. When Ikram Sahab first approached and VRG approached the telcos, Jazz Cash still is and was then the largest mobile wallet. And I remember after the first meeting, I sat down with my team and I said, here's the VRG proposition. तो इसके बारे में क्या करना है? So the consensus immediately, and it took about a minute and a half, said, नहीं जी, इनको नहीं आने देना. We're the largest wallet, हम क्यों इनको आने दें? And I think that sentiment is also echoed in a lot of places in Pakistan, where people look at very immediate concerns without looking at the larger picture. So Jazz got over its initial hesitation, and we're very proud to be the first telco that partnered with Ikram Saab and VRG. And I think the results are spectacular. If I'm not mistaken, Salman, Jazz is the largest component in the VRG percentage, right? Yes. So the moral of the story, and what I wanted to reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, is that Pakistan में potential बहुत है. The Chairman PTA talked about the fact that we've got 89% phone penetration, but smartphone penetration is still 40%. And abhi aapne dekha, the network was down because of floods and bijli and pani. These things will keep on happening. But we have to find technological solutions to that, and we have to find solutions like the Asaan Mobile Account. Let me just say in the end that this is a labor of love. I think Salman alluded to it. There were numerous times where I met up with the VRG leadership to try and understand why we were not making the progress we were making. And honestly, lesser men and women, Ikram Saab, would have fallen by the wayside. So credit to you that you remained steadfast and pushed it through. Very glad to be on stage to see the commercial launch of Asaan Mobile Account, and I'm convinced that this will be a significant partner in Pakistan's progress. Thank you.
So, thank you, Jazz. But you see, we say there is political will and there's financial bill, but nothing moves forward unless you have the regulators' will. And that's where State Bank comes in. And yes, the leadership is fantastic. They've been very supportive. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth. So, Simi Kamal Sahiba, Deputy Governor, State Bank, please honor us with your presence here.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And I'm particularly glad, Ikram Saab, that you've given us this opportunity. And we're also very honored that we have two former governors of the State Bank with us today, Mr. Yassin Anwar and Dr. Raza Bakir, who've all played a major role in this journey. So first of all, congratulations to all of you on AMA. And I'll just go a little off script and say that it's been a long and difficult journey. And there have been times when the two regulators and at the State Bank and the Pakistan Telecom Authority almost thought that this will not happen. And we often had with Dr. Raza Bakir, कि कब होएगा ये AMA? And I think the persistence paid off, and I think some of that persistence, a lot of it, is really due to Mr. Sehgal, because he did not give up, because we had some amazing challenges. And even now, if there's somebody I speak to every day, it's Mr. Sehgal. And he's discovered that he can call me at 8:30 every morning, because he knows that's when I'll answer, otherwise I'll send a message and say, I'll call you later. So I think credit to that, and I'm very glad, Zerard, that you are here also, and I hope that you will continue to take greater role in this. Of course, our partners, PTA, NADRA, the branchless banking providers, the CMOs, have all played a major role. Just to say, we had a soft launch in December 2021, which Dr. Raza Bakir was kind enough to chair at the State Bank. And we called it a soft launch for a certain reason. The reason was that we hadn't gone and done all the commercial media. And that's actually began on August 11th. And even then, there were last-minute issues and last-minute phone calls, and all of that went on between myself and Mr. Sehgal and the rest of our team. Why we called it a soft launch? Now we have that, and I think it's important, and we haven't acknowledged the entity that has actually funded the commercial launch, which is widespread. It is TVC, it is social media, it is print, and that is the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Organization that actually were very patient. And while they're not present here today, I think it's important to acknowledge what they did. So, and they extended their program partly because we needed to get this launch done. Of course, this is only the beginning. This remote account opening journey began in 2016 under the branchless banking regulations, and you could open accounts and operate them from the comfort of their homes. The results of all of this has been a huge increase in overall bank accounts. We've talked a lot of numbers here. Sometimes those numbers don't match up. But numbers from the State Bank, I guess, are the numbers from the horse's mouth. So we have grown. In 2016, we had 66 million accounts, and at the end of December last year, we had 147 million accounts. So that's a huge growth of 122% in 5 years. And half of these accounts, 77 million, are branchless banking accounts. So I think that shows to you the importance of that sector. Of course, there's a lot to do, and Homa spoke about that and the new Findex report. But we have 220 million people, 130 million are adults, and our account ownership, and that is counting active and inactive, which is actually a big difference, is 57%. And as we said before, the global average is 76%, the developing world 71%, India 78%, Sri Lanka 89%. So we are quite low in that. So while we can talk about our numbers and our huge increases, it's really not good enough. So we have 50 million financially excluded persons in Pakistan. And we talk about AAM ADMI, and I'll come back to it. Not many of the so-called AAM ADMI is here today, but they are excluded. And then if you start to look at activity, 10% accounts have only one transaction in the past 1 year. Is it fair to count them? I don't think so. If you do one bank account transactions, most of you here will do 3 or 4 at least a month. Most of the people who are low income will do one. They will get their salary and they will draw it out, and that's the end of it. And I don't call that financial inclusion at all. So financial inclusion is much, much beyond opening a bank account. And that's why we will talk about the forward plan for AMA. And then, of course, while Saigal Saab, you've called it AAM ADMI account, we have to remember the women. So it's the AAM Aurat also, which I think is extremely important. Because not only do they not have bank accounts, and only 1 out of 3 women has an active bank account. So if those of you are here and all have bank accounts, you are the exception. And those accounts are not active. And unless we have that Azadi, and Azadi is also for them to have phones. A lot of them, unfortunately, are not allowed to have phones, and we all know that. And that's something that we have to work together with other stakeholders, particularly PTA and the CMOs, because that's a very serious issue. And thankfully, quite close to the State Bank's heart. And the team is there who is ready, and I'm glad to see FICA's there today also. So I have a few messages for the banks. First, they've got to increase the uptake. We have put in, and for once we haven't asked you, the banks, to fund it. We have done it through, as I said, FCDO, but there is going to be a lot of ask from you now. As you know, we've pushed very hard on RDA, we've pushed very hard on RAST, and we will push just as hard on AMA. I've already spoken to our team, and from tomorrow we will have a daily sheet to see how this is tracking, and we will be talking to all of you very regularly. So that message, and I'm happy to say that while television and print and all of that makes a difference, unless you actually get to the AAM Afraad, actually show them how it works, it's not going to happen. So I'm pleased to say today that we're going to be doing 2 things in conjunction with the branchless banking providers. First, we will be using our BSC offices. We have 16 of them, and we will be actually bringing in people and getting them to open accounts. Something that we did very successfully with our housing, and I think it could work just as well with AMA, is the melas. You bring in people, they understand that they can open an account, because at the stage we are at, and then with the financial literacy that we don't have, they actually have to do it, and that's the only way. You may have tutorials, we will try TikTok, we will try anything that, we're not going to restrict ourselves to the more like high-end social media. We're going to use anything we can, but eventually the one-to-one will matter, and we will try and reach them wherever they are, whether it's rural or semi-urban or urban. So that's what we're going to be doing, and the team is sitting there raring to go. Secondly, of course, we've got to work on the used cases. I don't really like that word too much, because it sounds very technical and people switch off. What does an individual need from a bank? He needs far more than transaction. And we seem to have restricted ourselves to payment and transactions. And I've been saying that a very long time and maybe get disappointed sometimes. But we have to be able to meet the four principal needs. Transaction and payment is only one. There is saving need, there is investment need, and I know you spoke about microinsurance and so forth. And then there is overall the credit need. Unless you meet the credit need, you may open the account and it will fall away and it will become inactive. Particularly for women entrepreneurs, particularly for people who run small businesses. We spoke already about the gender lens and the need for that, and we're going to have to work with you one-on-one and as a group to see what we can do to bring women into this. And of course, there is, and we are working on that, and it's going to come out quite soon, is the branch-less banking agent-level interoperability, which will improve customer accessibility and make life so much more easier for them. Before I close, I have two things to say. One, we have to set ourselves an aspirational target. So we talked about 4.5 million accounts, and I think about 3.5 when we started our soft launch. Our target is going to have to be in excess of 10 million by the end of this calendar year. And so that's what we will target, and that's how we will give out targets to the banks that are part of this effort. And before I close, I have to thank our team here, because they have been really, even when internally in the State Bank we talked about what is going to happen, is this going to happen? And they were very, very, very keen on this, and I'd like to particularly recognize Mr. Samar Hasnan. You can stand, Samar. Noor, Umair, Imaduddin Saab, and we have Faika here. So please give them a hand. I know we've spoken about VRG, but they have worked very, very hard. And I think we all know that. And every day, and they kept saying, no, we have to have a bigger event. And now they want to have another big event, which we will have when Jamil Saab is here, which we hope we will be this week. So thank you for listening for me. And this is just the start. And I hope that we can have far more celebrations where we go to where these 50 million excluded persons feel truly included and feel welcomed and valued and respected. I say that like a broken record, but I will continue to do that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी मेरा नाम खुर्रम राहत है आई एम सीनियर वाइस प्रेसिडेंट विद नॉर्थ बेस सॉल्यूशंस AWS प्रीमियर पार्टनर आई थिंक इट्स एन एक्सीलेंट इनिशिएटिव ये जो VRG ने लिया है ये आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट जो गवर्नमेंट का एक इनिशिएटिव है जिसके अंदर ये VRG ने सॉल्यूशन दी है इट इज़ पोटेंशियली गोइंग टू हेल्प जो हमारे यहाँ आम लोग हैं जिनके लिए बैंक अकाउंट खोलना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज होता है उनको एक बहुत अच्छा व्हीकल मिल गया है जिसके तहत वो एक मेन स्ट्रीम बैंकिंग एक्टिविटीज़ कर सकते हैं पैसे कहीं भेजने हों रिसीव करने हो कर सकते हैं ट्रांजैक्शन कैरी कर सकते हैं तो आई थिंक आई विश VRG एंड द गवर्नमेंट बेस्ट ऑफ लक इट्स एन एक्सीलेंट इनिशिएटिव और हम सबको मिल के ना सिर्फ इसको सपोर्ट करना चाहिए बल्कि अपने इर्द गिर्द लोगों में इसकी आगे ही भी फैलानी चाहिए थैंक यू
तो आम आदमी की आज़ादी से आम अवाम की आज़ादी इकराम सहगल साहब और आम इंसान की आज़ादी एंड दिस इज़ व्हाट हैपन्स when you bring women in corridors of power and on decision-making tables. And I think That's something which is fantastically pointed out. But what was perhaps more important was better understanding of what is financial inclusivity. But with all due respect, and I'm a lay person, Simi ji, जब मैं एक आम आदमी से कनेक्ट करती हूँ, जो आपसे ही कह रहे हैं, यहाँ तो कोई आम आदमी नहीं है, लेकिन हम सबसे कोई 5-6 आम आदमी जुड़े हुए होते हैं, जो गाड़ी चलाते हैं, जो आपका दरवाज़ा खोलते हैं. उन सब के लिए जब चेक मिलता है बैंक से, तो उसको कैश कराना भी मसला होता है. तो मुझे लगता है this one very small step which is critical. And of course we need to move forward, and it is always a woman who will always celebrate her team. So I think that was also something great. And last but not least, it was so refreshing to see a serving State Bank person appreciate and acknowledge the people who've served in the past. This is something our politicians need to learn from. And with that, I will invite Dr. Raza Bakir Saab, former Governor, State Bank, to say a few words.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. सबसे पहले इकराम साहब आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया for the invitation to be here with you today. And let me recognize my predecessor Yasin Saab, Seema Kamil Sahiba, good to be at this event with you. Samar and your entire team, it's really a great pleasure. Ikram Saab, to see this day finally happening, I can't tell you how many countless hours I had spent during my time as governor, together with Seema, together with Samar, together with many other colleagues, trying to chart the journey. Okay, when are we going to finally get the State Bank initiated Asaan Mobile Account scheme moving forward? And as you know, we did the soft launch primarily as an innovative way to get at least the messages out while we were waiting for the mass media campaign to get started. So at the outset, जो चीज़ मैं ख़ास कर कहना चाहता हूँ वो ये है कि आज बहुत खुशी का मौका है कि ये फॉर्मल लॉन्च इसकी आज हो रही है. तो आप सबको जिन्होंने इस पे मेहनत की है, बहुत बहुत मुबारक. Asaan Mobile Account is one of the many initiatives जो कि पाकिस्तान में डिजिटाइजेशन के लिए जो काम हो रहा है उसको और भी आगे बढ़ाएगा. लेकिन मैं सबसे पहले शुरू करना चाहता हूँ थोड़ी सी एक स्नैपशॉट लेने के लिए कि हमारी इकोनॉमी में, हमारी मईशत में डिजिटाइजेशन की तरफ क्या हो रहा है. बिकॉज इट इज़ इम्पॉर्टेंट टू टेक a step back and recognize or realize the scale at which digitization is proceeding. And you may or you may not know, but the State Bank of Pakistan puts out a very, very useful quarterly report on payments. And it's titled Payments, but it's actually very illustrative to look at the magnitude of digital payments that are taking place in Pakistan. The last such report, I believe, is the one from March, or at least that's the one that I have my numbers from. And State Bank would now have more up-to-date numbers. But I want to quote a few numbers from there so that you recognize the scale of growth of digitization in Pakistan, especially over the recent few years. So, according to this report released in March, and if you look at the period from July of 2021 to March of 2022, you will see, first of all, that the total number of e-banking transactions, which are all transactions that pertain to banks or other intermediaries that happen through digital means, whether it's internet banking, whether it is mobile banking, whether it is other non-paper ways of banking. That has risen to 1.1 billion transactions in that 9-month period. And that compares to 860 million transactions in the same period last year, which comes to a growth of 36% in this fiscal year. When you look at the figures in terms of values, or how much in rupee terms is being conducted right now through digital means, in fiscal year 21, over this period, that figure was 63 trillion rupees. Okay? 63 trillion rupees was the total amount that was being transacted. This fiscal year, through March, that figure had risen 52% to 96 trillion rupees. So 96 trillion And this is a 3-quarter figure, so by the time you have the figures for the whole fiscal year, that figure would be well above easily 120 trillion rupees. So that is the scale, and the growth is 50%. So if you just work that forward and see what is the opportunity for digitization in Pakistan, you will be able to do the math yourself. Another key statistic that I want to share with you in terms of digitization is one of the initiatives that was mentioned, which is RAST, Pakistan's free, fast, and secure payment system that was launched just a few months ago. And in just a few months, the number of RAST IDs has risen to 18 million RAST IDs. Now, 18 million in a population that we have around 200 million may not seem large, but the total number of bank apps that are in Pakistan on people's phones is 21 million. So out of those 21 million, about 18 million people in Pakistan already have a RAST ID, which is important because it's one of the State Bank's huge initiatives to promote digitization in Pakistan. It's free, it's fast, i.e. in a few seconds the payment is done, and it's secure. So if you haven't tried it yet, I really encourage you to try that. Now, these were just some figures to show everybody the broader scale of digitization activity that is occurring in our country. As Seema Sahiba has said, there is a lot more to do as well. She already shared with you some statistics about where we are in terms of account ownership. If she had shared these statistics in terms of access to credit, or access to savings products, or access to investment products at the retail level, these statistics would have been a lot lower. So we have a journey in front of us, a journey that I like to illustrate often by comparing the number of mobile SIM accounts, which is about 190 million, to the number of unique bank accounts, which is around 80 million, according to the last figure. So Seema Sahiba said very aptly that there are at least 50 million people who can easily be banked who are not banked yet. Now, in my view, a number of the initiatives that the State Bank has underway are going to deliver, I think, progress at a much faster pace than we have seen recently. And I want to recap some of these so that people understand that there is a broader ecosystem of all the digitization work that we, the State Bank, is pushing, and want to then end about how AMA fits into all of those. So first is the digital onboarding initiative. This was launched a few months ago by the State Bank, and what it allows is that people with an app on their phone, it requires a smartphone, but if you have an app of the bank on your phone, you can do your remote biometric on your app, on your phone. And you can open an account just simply by having an app. RAST, I already mentioned. Third is the licensing framework for digital banks. This is a very exciting journey that the State Bank of Pakistan started last year. We have had very good interest in the country for digital banking licenses. I think soon the State Bank will be announcing the progress with that, and once licenses are awarded for digital banks, that's going to be another game changer to make it easy for people to bank, to save, and to invest. We have started, and I think the State Bank will soon share something on that as well, a common Know Your Customer framework. When I was at the State Bank, this was, to me, particularly important, because if you have tried to open a bank account, or if you have tried to switch from one bank to another, you would know how difficult it is in terms of the number of forms that you are required to fill out. A common Know Your Customer framework is the framework where you fill out these forms just once. And these forms, all the fields that banks typically ask for, are kept in one repository with your consent. And then if you want to switch banks, you don't have to fill out all those forms again. All you have to do is indicate that you consent for your information to be shared, and you can easily open a bank account in some other bank. The whole goal of initiative like this is to promote competition between banks and to put the customer first, to put all of you first. And in our current landscape, sometimes we forget that banking is first and foremost and should be first and foremost about you. Now, some of these examples that I mentioned of initiatives, our digital onboarding framework, RAST, digital banks licensing framework, our common KYC framework, are all frameworks for our country that I believe are going to help bridge this gap that I spoke about. In this landscape, AMA, Asaan Mobile Account, is a very, very exciting entry, and that's why I started off by saying how glad I am that we are having this launch today. It's important to recognize that AMA hits a part of the population that maybe is not being very well served by all the other initiatives that I mentioned. And this is particularly that part of the population that may not have smartphones, but they have a phone that has a USSD channel. And if it is as easy as calling *2262# to open a bank account, the population or the segment that AMA is going to integrate into the financial system is huge, and it's a unique opportunity for you, Ikram Saab, right now because of being the only player in this space right now. So the State Bank created the framework of an Asaan Mobile Account. You are the player in this. You have a target market that in a way is prime for you because there are countless people that don't have a smartphone. Even people with a smartphone can access that. And it is now up to you as well as the State Bank what you make of this. I am hoping and confident that you will make the utmost success of it as this journey goes forward. Now, as you take this journey forward, and this is the note that I will end on, I have a few suggestions for your consideration. As somebody who was there when this whole scheme got launched, and to the extent they prove useful in achieving the type of growth that you want, I would be very, very happy to have contributed. The first is something that Seema Sahiba touched upon, which is communication. The mass media campaign has been launched, I believe, but I think there is an opportunity to do a lot more so that you get to any woman, and I'll say woman first, and any man, and at least 1 out of 2 should know what an Asaan Mobile Account is. Would that be the case right now? Probably not. But set yourself the goal. Do focus groups. And until you see that 1 out of 2 women or 1 out of 2 men know what it is or have tried it, don't relax. And there are lots of different ways in which one can communicate. The State Bank recently has been very innovative in communication tools. For those of you who know the Roshan Digital Account initiative of the State Bank even went so far as to create a song to celebrate the Roshan Digital Account. It was something that the State Bank had never done before, to put songs together, but it was done as an innovative way to communicate. And it had a big impact in terms of the outreach of the Roshan Digital Account initiative. So number 1, I would encourage you, is on the communication. There's a long way to go. Second is the customer journey. I think it's easy simply by texting or calling this number, but what happens after that has to be made even easier and made even simpler. You are working in a culture where typically our financial institutions are not geared that way to think. And in the State Bank of Pakistan, I remember when we launched some of our schemes, we had to call the chief technology officers of banks and get into the weeds ourselves as to what should be a smooth customer journey for a customer. We did, I think this was done most recently in Rast when people were called in. It was done also in the time of the Roshan digital account. So I encourage you in this case also کہ جو بھی بینکس جس طرح یا آپ انٹرفیس بنا رہے ہیں اس کے اندر گھس کے اس کو دیکھیں کہ کیا یہ ایک عام عورت یا عام آدمی کے لیے آسان ہے کہ نہیں ہے. اینڈ ڈونٹ ریلیکس انٹل یو فیل کہ اٹ از. مائی تھرڈ سجیشن اس کے آما اگر آپ لوگوں تک پہنچا دیں گے تو وہ ایک بہت اچھا نتیجہ ہوگا, لیکن وہ تب تک چلے گا نہیں جب تک آپ جو مرچنٹس ہیں ان کو آن بورڈ نہیں کریں گے. اینڈ یو ہیو اے ڈیڈیکیٹڈ ڈرائیو ٹورڈز آن بورڈنگ مرچنٹس, بیکاز الٹیمیٹلی اگر آپ کے پاس ایک آسان موبائل اکاؤنٹ ہے لیکن جہاں سے آپ نے کوئی چیزیں خریدنی ہیں, اگر وہ دکاندار اس ذریعے آپ سے پیمنٹ نہیں لے سک رہا تو پھر آپ کے لیے آسان موبائل اکاؤنٹ کا فائدہ آپ دوبارہ سوچیں گے. اور آپ نہیں چاہتے کہ جتنی محنت سے آپ نے ایک اکاؤنٹ کھولا ہو تو پھر وہ ان ایکٹیو ہو جائے. جیسے سیما صاحبہ نے کہا کہ ایک ہماری پرابلم یہ ہے کہ بہت سارے اکاؤنٹس ان ایکٹیو ہو جاتے ہیں. تو مرچنٹس کو کس طرح آن بورڈ کرنا ہے, کیونکہ مرچنٹس کی ریزرویشنز کافی دفعہ ہوتی ہیں کہ وہ کیش میں کام کرنا چاہتے ہیں, کبھی کبھار اس میں ٹیکسیشن کے ایشوز ہوتے ہیں. لیکن یہ دنیا ایسی ہے کہ کمیونیکیشن کے ذریعے اور انسینٹیوز کے ذریعے اگر آپ زور لگائیں تو سوچ سکتے ہیں کہ کیسے آپ نے مرچنٹس کو آن بورڈ کرنا ہے. دیٹس ان مائی ویو اے کی کنسٹیچوئنسی جس کو بھولنا نہیں چاہیے. اینڈ مائی لاسٹ سجیشن فار یور کنسیڈریشن از, ایز آئی انڈرسٹینڈ اٹ, آسان موبائل اکاؤنٹ کو آلریڈی ایکسیس ہے یا ہو جائے گا ود RTGS جو ہمارا ریئل ٹائم گراس سیٹلمنٹ سسٹم ہے. اس کے ساتھ ساتھ میرے خیال میں بہت اہم ہوگا کہ سوچا جائے کہ آپ نے سسٹمیٹکلی راست کے ساتھ کیسے انٹیگریشن کرنی ہے, کیونکہ جو ہم فیڈ بیک ہے وہ راست سے یہ ہے کہ more and more players are finding that that is the framework on which they want to shift onto. So because that is the future of Pakistan, I firmly believe, I think اگر آپ اس پہ ارلی اسٹریٹجک تھنکنگ کریں اور آئی بلیو آپ کو جو چیزیں چاہیے تھیں مثلاً APIs وغیرہ وہ آپ کو مل گئے ہیں, تو اس پہ اگر آپ اپنی انٹیگریشن کے بارے میں سوچیں تو آئی تھنک the dream that we all have کہ یہ آسان موبائل اکاؤنٹ ہر عورت اور ہر آدمی تک پہنچے گا, that will be very well realized. Thank you very much again and I wish you all the best.
آسان موبائل اکاؤنٹ ہے پاس تو سب کچھ آسان.
Thank you, Raza Bakri Sahab. Because I'm a professor and I'm boring, so when I was listening to Raza Bakri Sahab, تو ہم کہتے ہیں جب ہم بات کرتے ہیں کہ جی تھیوری ہوتی ہے, پھر کانسیپٹ ہوتا ہے, پھر رول ہوتا ہے اور پھر آپریشنز ہوتے ہیں. تو آپریشنز پہ ہم آ گئے ہیں اور اب سسٹیننس ہے اور اسٹرینتھننگ ہے. سو فار دیٹ اکرام سہگل صاحب انشاءاللہ. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite Ikram Sehgal Saab himself for concluding remarks and to thank all of you for being here and also to hear about the Inshallah. So Ikram Sehgal Saab, over to you.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. سب سے پہلے تو شکریہ ادا کرنا چاہیے اللہ تعالیٰ کو کہ یہاں پر ہمیں پہنچا دیا. اور میں سب کو بولے اس کے بعد شکریہ کس کو ادا کر سکتا ہوں, لیکن میرے امپلائیز یہاں بیٹھے اور سب سے پہلے جو میں سمجھتا ہوں ہمارے گارڈ عام آدمی, کھڑے ہو جائیں. یہ ان کی محنت ہے, ये इनकी मेहनत है और 35 साल की मेहनत है जो आज हम इधर खड़े हैं। ये SMS का हो या वैकन हट का हो, इन लोगों ने किया ये पॉसिबल। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। और अली शाह यहाँ नहीं है। अली शाह और मैं बैठते थे और क्लोजेस्ट एडवाइज़र हमारा जो था वो अजीज़ पेनवाला था, और वो मुझे बोलता था ये कभी नहीं काम करेगी, लेकिन बाद में वो टर्न कर गया अजीज़, और उसने बोला हाँ हो सकता है, और उसने हमें एडवाइस किया, गाइड किया। अली शाह अभी अमेरिका में है, तो जहाँ पर भी आए अभी थोड़ी देर में आ जाएगा। उसकी टीम जब खड़े हो जाए, उसकी टीम आईपाथ वाले, आईपाथ, ये यंग टीम led by Samad, they have done this job. Thank you. And then VRG वाले माशाल्लाह, और इनके साथ i3 Pathfinder के थोड़े से लोग, हमें थोड़ी दुश्वारियाँ हुई थी i3 Pathfinder, लेकिन तसव्वुर ने ये काफ़ी किया, और मैं एक्नॉलेज करता हूँ अली गर्देज़ी को, जिसने आके बहुत कुछ काम किया हमारे लिए। देखें, सीमा कामिल ने बात की, मैं हिस्टोरिकली गवर्नमेंट के साथ नहीं काम करता हूँ। मैं एक किताब थी एटलस श्रग्ड आयन रैंड की, उसकी थीम ये थी कि गवर्नमेंट के साथ कभी काम ना करो, गवर्नमेंट में कभी ज्वाइन ना करो। और मैंने 2 दफ़ा गवर्नमेंट के साथ काम किया। 2 शुगर मिल बेचे मैंने बांग्लादेश को, उसके पैसे मुझे नहीं मिले। हैवी माइग्रेंट कॉम्प्लेक्स ने अभी तक पैसे नहीं दिए। उसके बाद पाकिस्तान टीवी के लाइसेंसिंग फ़ी हमने पूरी की। इन कभी भी ये 22 करोड़ से ज़्यादा नहीं जाते थे, हमने इनके 44 करोड़ कर दिए, आज तक हमें एक पैसा नहीं मिला। ठीक है, 22 साल गुजर गए। तो गवर्नमेंट के साथ मैं काम नहीं करता, तो मैं बड़ी सोच समझ के स्टेट बैंक के साथ, और मैं बोलता हूँ बड़ा प्लेजेंटली सरप्राइज्ड, क्योंकि स्टार्टिंग विद यासीन अनवर who's sitting here, mashallah, he's the first one who actually said go, and then somebody who's not here, Ashraf Batra, his last conscious effort before he left for America was the last file he signed was our PSO-PSP file. The last day he signed it. So he's not here, but I'd like to acknowledge it. And then, of course, Raza Bakar came, and Seema Kamil. And what can I can thank them, only thank them. But most of all, I would like to thank Samar Hasnan and his team of people. Samar Hasnan, Noor Ahmed, Imaduddin, and of course Azmatullah, probably not here. And इतना इन लोग ने मुझे इनकरेज किया, पूरा वक्त इनकरेज करते रहे, कभी भी इन्होंने नहीं बोला मैं करें। और इनको पता था कि हम कितना हेमरेज कर रहे थे, क्योंकि हमारी एक्चुअली सैलरीज और ये वो देना पड़ता है। हर महीने कोई 1.5-2 करोड़ हमारे निकल जाते थे, हार्ड अर्न मनी विच फॉर दैट थिंग एक्सेट्रा। हम 3 साल पहले तैयार थे, लेकिन कोई आ गए बीच में साहब, उन्होंने आके हमारे खिलाफ सूट कर दिया। वो हमें 1.5 साल के बाद जज साहब ने ये फैसला दिया कि ये तो आप डिफेंडेंट ही नहीं हो सकते, क्योंकि आप तो ये तो डिफेंडेंट कोई और है। 1.5 साल के बाद 1.5 साल हम बैठे रहे। उसके बाद कभी हमें कोई प्राइम मिनिस्टर ना मिले, कभी गवर्नर साहब चेंज हो गए, तो नेचुरली वो कुछ ना कुछ दुश्वारियाँ होती रहीं, नहीं तो ये पहले हो सकता था। मैं रिकग्नाइज़ करता हूँ अली नसीर को, यहाँ बैठे अली नसीर और आमिर इब्राहिम, इनके बगैर ये नहीं चलता। टेलको की इनने बात नहीं की कि इनको क्या बाकी टेलकोज ने कितनी प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट किया इनके लिए। इनको ये भी बोला हम आपको वो कर देंगे, ब्लैक लिस्ट कर देंगे जैज़ को, कि आपने क्यों साइन किया इनके साथ, बट दे स्टूड देयर ग्राउंड। और मैं ये एक्नॉलेज करता हूँ कि एंड particularly Ali Nasir and Amir Ibrahim, both of them stood their ground, and despite the fact that they acknowledged that we would be eating into their business. और یہ چیز ہوتی ہے جب آپ ایک قوم کی آپ خدمت کرنے چاہتے ہیں تو آپ انسٹیٹیوشن کے بارے سوچتے ہیں, اپنے انڈیویجول کے بارے نہیں سوچتے, آپ باٹم لائن پروفٹس کے بارے نہیں سوچتے, آپ قوم کے بارے سوچتے ہیں. تو یہ بہت بڑی بات تھی. اور میں پرٹیکولرلی میں یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں, میرے لیے اور ایک پلیزنٹ سرپرائز تھی پاکستان ٹیلیکمیونیکیشن اتھارٹی. جو جنرل عظیم باجوہ از ناٹ ہیئر, ہز میسج واز ہیئر. He and his people like Dr. Sargana and Dr. Shahbaz and Brigadier Haider, they're the three, Amar Shahzad, they're the 3-4 people who really stood by us. And they had a lot of problem from the other 3 telcos. But they had, unke paas jazz ki example thi, aur jazz ki unke paas agreement thi, aur by the way, agar sahi maano mein dekha jaye, تو وہ جائز کی ایگریمنٹ ہماری 3 مہینے میں ایکسپائر ہو گئی تھی, لیکن انہوں نے کبھی نہیں ہمیں بتایا کہ وہ ایکسپائر ہو گئی. یہ 3 سال گزر گئے, 4 سال گزر گئے, تو سب یہ ہو گیا. دین آئی ووڈ لائک ٹو ریکگنائز مائی اون فیملی اینڈ اینڈ آف کورس اسٹارٹنگ ود شناز مائی وائف, آف کورس سیڈ دس ول نیور ورک, بٹ شی از ناؤ convinced that it will, So, but she did encourage because she knew that there was a good thing about it, and of course, and then after that, Kashmala, my daughter-in-law, who before my son did, became a believer, and she said it will work. And then, of course, my daughter Nefa, who thought about this idea the first day, Abu, why is this man not got a bank account? What can we do to get this bank account? She's the one who originally thought about it. So, Nefa, good of you. And of course, I have to recognize Zarar. What can I say? I will talk about him in the end. But definitely, unless you have your successor believing in what you're doing, you can never do it. Now, having said all that, I will also acknowledge the other telcos, despite their reservations, despite what they had. Zong came through, Ufone came through, and of course Telenor on the last day and the last hour came through, but they did. So I شکریہ میں ان کا ادا کرتا ہوں. ضرور میں شکریہ ادا کرنا چاہتا ہوں بینکس میں, 13 بینکس میں ہمیں ایک بینک سے بھی پرابلم نہیں ہوا. انفیکٹ انکریجمنٹ ملی ہمیں بینک سے. اینڈ کبیر از سٹنگ ہیئر. واٹ کین آئی سے, آپ کو یہ نہیں پتہ ان کو بخار ہے آج, اور یہ بخار میں آئے ہیں وہاں سے اسلام آباد سے, بیکاز آف دس, جسٹ ٹو اٹینڈ دس تھنگ. تھینک یو کبیر. اینڈ آف کورس شہزاد دادا couldn't stay because our original function was on Friday and he had got his ticket, he had taken his son to college and he could not change. And I thank Shahzad Dada and UBL, of course, Jazz being first, and then of course UBL being second. And I think Salman forgot to mention JS Bank. JS has been a great supporter also, and JS has a lot of accounts JS Bank. In fact, اگر آج ہم کو آپ کو ایک سیکرٹ بتاتے ہیں جو ہم نے کبھی نہیں کہا, کہ ہم نے یوز کیس بولتے ہیں نا, ریمیٹنس جو ہوتی ہے سیلریز کی, یہ ہم نے 2 سال پہلے جیز کے ساتھ جے ایس کے ساتھ شروع کر دی تھی. اور انفیکٹ اور ایسے ایریاز میں جہاں پر ان ایکسیسیبل سی میں میریٹائم سیکورٹی میں, اور اس کے بعد فرنٹیئر کور کی ان سب کو ہم نے انفیکٹ سیلریز ان کی جاتی تھی, آلریڈی جا رہی ہیں. ٹھیک ہے. اور باقی اسٹیٹ بینک کی چیزیں آپ نے ذکر کی تھی, انٹر ایجنٹ پبلک کی. آپ ایکچولی جا کے اگر جب یہ پورا کھول جائے گا تو کسی بھی اس کو اپنے بینک میں اپنے برانچ میں جانا نہیں پڑے گا. کوئی بھی ایجنٹ کے پاس 160,000 ایجنٹس ہیں, بینکس ہیں, کوئی جا کے کیش کرا سکتا ہے, کہیں کیش کرتا ہے, کہیں پیسے دے سکتا ہے, پیسے ریڈی والے کو پیسے دے سکتا ہے. آپ نے بات کی, رضا نے 2-3 باتیں کی جو میں بالکل ایگری کرتا ہوں, اور میں ریکویسٹ کرتا ہوں کہ ابھی 10 دن ہو گئے ہیں کیمپین کو, جو اویئرنیس ہونا چاہیے تھا وہ نہیں ہوا ہے, اور آبویسلی اس میں ہمیں ریٹروسپیکٹ کرنا چاہیے تھا. میں بتاتا ہوں کہ ہمیں جو ریئیکشن ملا آلویز، میں تو زیادہ تر نور احمد صاحب سے بات کرتا تھا، امیجیٹ سیما سے بات کی، نور احمد سے بات کی، امیجیٹ وہ کرتے تھے، اس کو چینج کرو، وہ کرو. لیکن آئی تھنک comprehensive requirement required where the awareness which Raza talked about, that awareness is very important, and we got to create that. Money is there, let's not waste that money. Let's not waste that money. Use that money purposefully. ہمارے پیسے تو نہیں ہیں، کسی کے پیسے ہیں انہیں لگایا ہے فار گڈ پرپز، لائک ٹھیک ہے نا جی. وہ یہ فائدہ نہیں ہوگا کہ آپ 45 سیکنڈ کا ایڈ بنائیں، اس میں 30 سیکنڈ بات کر رہے ہیں، وہ آپس میں بات کر رہے ہیں، آخری 10 سیکنڈ میں آپ کو پتہ چلتا ہے آما بھی کوئی چیز ہے. یہ بات ٹھیک نہیں ہے. تو میں آپ سے یہ ریکویسٹ کرتا ہوں یہی کہ ہمیں بھی تھوڑا سا انوالو کریں، جس طرح میں پہلے کر رہا تھا، کہ ان کو بھی ہم بتائیں کہ بھائی اویئرنیس کیا ہے. اویئرنیس آپ کو ضروری ہے کہ آپ اویئرنیس کریں. آپ نے بڑی اچھی بات کی مرچنٹ کی ایکوزیشن کی. تو میں ہماری ایک پروڈکٹ ہے لانچ، پائلٹ ہو چکی ہے، اور وہ جو جس آدمی نے لانچ کیا وہ میں دیکھا لیٹ پہنچا ہے، لیکن کوئی اس کی تھی عماد. اس پروڈکٹ کا نام ہے فٹافٹ، اینڈ ہی از آن بورڈنگ دا مرچنٹس in a virtual Amazon. That means we are going to be delivering pharmaceuticals and clothes and groceries and textiles, and because of that they are at the moment onboarding the merchant, because that is a prime, very correctly, unless you onboard the merchants, where are you going to make the payment system? So very correctly we are doing that. Thank you. I wish Dr. Shamshad Akhtar was here, because she was one of the few people we gave a briefing to, and she was very encouraging, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Unfortunately, the thing she's heading now, Karandas, was most unhelpful to us. I introduced Bill Gates to General Musharraf in 2003 in Davos. And whatever this thing, I could go to Bill Gates anytime directly. I never did. But Karandas didn't give us a penny. We kept on requesting them, right? Karandas, yes, they did give money for Rast, and Rast is a terrific campaign. Bahut acha campaign. I think it's a wonderful idea. But it's a public sector. ہمیں بھی کچھ پیسے دے دینا تھا ہم پرائیویٹ سیکٹر والوں کو. نہیں دیا، ایک پیسہ نہیں دیا، بس وہ بولتے رہے ٹیلی فون پر ہم کل کریں گے، اور پھر ہمارے آئیڈیاز لے کے اپنے کو پروجیکٹ کرتے تھے. وہ تو اپنے دکھاتے تھے. ٹھیک ہے جی. ایک صاحب تھے جو میں ان کا نام نہیں لیتا، وہ بس انٹرٹین ہی کرتے رہتے تھے سب دنیا کو، اور کچھ نہیں کرتے تھے. تو کرنداز، آئی ایم سوری، از ناٹ ون آف مائی فیوریٹ آرگنائزیشنز ایٹ دا مومنٹ. جی اسٹارٹ اپ فیلئرس دیکھیں نا، ان میں سے کرنداز نے کتنوں کو انویسٹ کیے جو اب فیلئرز ہو گئے. اب میں نام نہیں لیتا ہوں، 8-10 فیلئر تو ہو چکے ہیں، رائٹ. اس سب میں کرنداز نے کچھ نہ کچھ پیسے لگائے ہیں. ٹھیک ہے. جس میں کیس تھا، جو اسٹیٹ بینک ان کو کہہ رہا تھا کہ بھائی اس میں کرو، نہیں کیا انہوں نے. ٹھیک ہے. اس کے بعد آ گیا جی، سلمان نے بات کی ہے ورلڈ اکنامک فورم کی. مجھے کبھی کبھی افسوس آتا ہے کہ ہم اپنے ملک میں ہماری اتنی اہمیت نہیں ہے جو باہر ہے. ورلڈ اکنامک فورم جو بہت سلیکٹیو ہے، اس نے لاسٹ پریزنٹیشن جو ہماری ہوئی ہے مئی میں، اس کے بعد کہا ہے کہ یو آر اے لائٹ ہاؤس، یو آر اے لائٹ ہاؤس کنٹری، بیکاز دیر از مینی سسٹمس. دس از 1-to-1. One telco, one bank, one this thing. There is nothing in the world today which is many to many. This is a unique system. So they are now considering to put us, there are 2 countries already on the lighthouse countries, and we are the 2 countries being considered Pakistan to be a lighthouse country. And with that, the State Bank of Pakistan, they'll acknowledge the State Bank of Pakistan. تو دیکھیں، بہت سی چیزیں آدمی کہہ سکتا ہے. راست کے بارے آپ نے بالکل ٹھیک بولا. وی آر دا اسٹیٹ بینک ٹیم ریکگنائز دس. سہیل جواد صاحب یہاں نہیں ہیں. دے سیڈ انٹیگریٹ. وی آر انٹیگریٹنگ. بٹ کیا انٹیگریشن میں کیا ہوا؟ क्योंकि आप अपने वेंडर के पास जाते हैं, वो 2 महीने से वो जवाब ही नहीं दे रहा आपको। हम तो तैयार हैं, हम कल सुबह इंटीग्रेट कर सकते हैं और रास्त सक्सेसफुल है। बट आप सोचें, सीमा ने बात की थी 50 मिलियन अकाउंट्स, वो 50 मिलियन अकाउंट्स आप कब पहुंचेगा, रास्त कब पहुंचेगा, जब तक आप इंटीग्रेट नहीं करेंगे रास्त और आसान मोबाइल अकाउंट को। आपने इंटीग्रेट करेंगे तो फिर आप पहुंचेंगे ना, फिर आपकी फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन ठीक होगी। ये बातें हैं, मैं करता हूँ कि जी ये क्यों नहीं हुआ, ये सब चीज़ें क्यों रह गई। हम एक फ्यूडल सोसाइटी हैं, फ्यूडल सोसाइटी में हम नहीं चाहते कि कॉमन मैन जो आम आदमी, मैं विथ ऑल ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट आम औरत भी, ठीक है, आम आदमी जो है वो उसको ही शुड हैव पार्ट ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल पाई। वो नहीं चाहता कि भाई इतना क्रेडिट है तो उसको भी कुछ क्रेडिट मिल जाए। तो फ्यूडल सोसाइटी तो ऑलवेज कोशिश करेगी कि आम आदमी को नहीं मिले, वो सूद के अंदर फंसा रहे। यहाँ जहाँ पर आप 17-18% दे रहे हैं, वो 110% सूद दे पर थिंग एक्सेट्रा पर ईयर, और वो सूद के अंदर डेट साइकिल शुड कंटिन्यू। तो ये मैं समझता हूँ इतनी बड़ी एक वो है कि आप नहीं अभी हमें भी नहीं समझ आ रही कि द एक्सटेंट ऑफ इट। जो मैं कहता हूँ कि ये हम फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस, जो फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस अब करके मैं नहीं बता सकता। मेरे एक मेड सर्वेंट थी, रो रही थी एक दिन बैठ के बाहर इस्लामाबाद में। मैंने कहा क्या हो गया तुम्हें? बोल जी मेरा मियाँ उधर, उसको बेचारा वो सूद में फंसा हुआ है। पता चला कि शी वॉज डिलीवरिंग अबाउट 2 years ago and didn't have money. They borrowed 10,000 rupees. Now they owed 2 lakh rupees to the same people. But that man was working from 3:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night. But the debt was never finishing. The debt was carrying on. So I sent people, some people, got some policemen, went and paid that chap that much money and said, please let him go. So that man, ultimately said, आप कितनों को बचाएंगे? हम तो सभी यहाँ पर ऐसे फंसे हैं डेट के अंदर, क्यों हमें सुबह से शाम रातों काम कराते हैं कि हमें पैसे देते हैं, फिर हम डेट में चले जाते हैं। तो ये फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस बहुत ज़रूरी है। और मैं ये अवेयरनेस जो है ना, जो राइटफुली रज़ा बाकर ने भी कहा, सीमा कामिल ने भी कहा, और आई थिंक पूरी स्टेट बैंक टीम को ये अवेयरनेस है कि अवेयरनेस वी मस्ट क्रिएट अवेयरनेस। अनलेस यू क्रिएट अवेयरनेस you will go nowhere. I would like to now turn to my family and particularly to my 3 grandchildren who are here. And I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of them because 2 are doing exceptionally well in one of the finest schools in New York, Brearley. Amani, mashallah, she's breaking one of the taboos of the Sehgal family. We are never good at mathematics. She finally got an A in mathematics in ISO, so that's wonderful to start with, right? And then, of course, Elena, Elena, star in her own right. You can't walk down Park Avenue without having every doorman and everybody passing by saying, hi, Elena, how are you, darling? So that thing, etc. You can go to any restaurant, Elena gets in and the maitre d' comes out and takes you in, past the line. So I think, and then she stood for election for the class president, and the first thing she did after her opponent, she went and offered her to become a joint president. So that's politics for you, at the age of 12, New York. And of course, what I'm really proud of her is that today John McEnroe is teaching her tennis, coaching her tennis, and she's 12 and she's already ready to get into the big leagues. Well done, Elena. And of course, my Suleiman. And Suleiman, of course, my high point of my life is walking him to school in the morning, taking him to basketball, taking him to squash court, taking him to various things, and then sitting down with him, discussing. And then he patiently teaches me things that I do not know. For example, games and things like that, right? But I was, thinking about succession and things like that, and he brought me down to earth, which is what you want you don't want from a child, and yet you would like from somebody. I was getting my medicine together, putting my medicine together the other day, and I told him, I said, he was looking very patiently, and I said, darling, when I grow older, you will pray for me. And he said, no, Dada, you'll be dead. and I won't be there. He was right. You know, he was absolutely blunt, but correct. You know, that is what you want in a successor. You know, you don't want to live in a fantasy world, you know, etc. I would like to speak about my son, because, you know, this thing, many years ago, when my son, of course, graduated summa cum laude, with first in economics and first in political science in Boston University, decided to do law. And I had my heart set out on him doing an MBA, but Riaz Khan, the Dean of Admissions in Boston University, told me very patiently that, listen to your son, what he wants to do. So I asked him, he said, law. I said, why didn't you tell me? So he did law, and he did very well in law. Today he's recognized, for the last 8 years, he's on the 10 best lawyers in the United States on securitization and leasing of aircraft. He and his team are number one for the last 6 years, constantly on the New York Times, whether you have the Legal 500, whether this thing recognized as such. And he could actually come back for a particular medical reason. I am keeping him there. But he's all that I could have hoped for and more besides, because I always get good counsel from him. I understand everything. But I am lucky, because obviously his vision is far more than mine. And his vision, of course, of a bank, of other things that he wants to do is far more than mine. And I'm sure that, like I told him, that, you know, like my father provided me a platform of education, etc., and, you know, and toughness, where he took me to tough schools, you know, I came to that. Now, मेरे लिए तो बहुत अच्छा है, मैं तो कंटेंट आदमी हूँ. मैंने फौज ज्वाइन किया था और हम लड़ाई में हमें लड़ाई में भेज दिया गया. 2 साल भी पूरे नहीं हुए थे, तो वो डिग्री भी हमारी वहाँ पर रह गई, क्योंकि कर तो लिया था हमने, बट वो ऑफिशियली हमें नहीं दिया था. वो तो 20 साल बाद जब मेरा कोर्समेट जनरल बन के कमांडेंट गया पीएमए, उसने बोला डिग्री तो निकालो हमारी, तो उन्होंने फिर डिग्री हमारी निकाल के दी. तो मेरे से कोई पूछता है कि तुमने, हमारी जब 9 माइल की रन होती थी, 9 माइल की, तो 8वें माइल पर एक मस्जिद आता था, उसका नाम था इलियासी मस्जिद. वहाँ पानी बड़ा ठंडा होता था, तो हम बोलते थे तुमने डिग्री किधर से ली? बोले इलियासी मस्जिद की पानी पी के लिए हमने. तो पीएमए की यही होता है कि फ़ौज में जब जाते हैं और आप करते हैं, जब फ़ौज से आप आते हैं तो आपको कुछ नहीं पता होता है. आप एलसी, लेटर ऑफ क्रेडिट को, पहले मैं समझता था एलसी इज़ अ गर्ल, यू नो, इतना मुझे पता था इसके बारे, बैंकिंग के बारे या फाइनेंस के बारे. लेकिन अल्लाह ताला ने इतना दिया है कि आज मैं कंटेंट हूँ. और सबसे बड़ी मेरी कंटेंटमेंट जो है वो इधर बैठी है, वो मेरे एम्प्लॉयज़ में सबसे पहले, और मेरी फैमिली में सेकंड, बिकॉज माई एम्प्लॉयज़ आर लाइक माई फैमिली. आई वॉन्ट टू थैंक यू रजा फॉर बीइंग हियर, सीमा कामिल, Huma, for being such a nice compare always. Thank you. And of course, Kabir, I've already thanked you. Ali Nasir. I want Salman to acknowledge what all the good work you have done and the team that you have built up. And mashallah, we can say with conviction in the IT industry that we've got the least turnover of any team. And we've got, yes, and we have also rewarded them. We have also rewarded them by taking them to Davos. And all the people who went to Davos, please stand up.
I'll have to stand up too.
They are all the ones, other people are there who went to Davos. They went to Davos, and then they went through Europe. More of them went through Europe. Right? And of course, I had Faisal accompanying them to make sure that we had everything. So, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आप सबके आने का. मैं अल्लाह ताला के बोलते हैं ना कि आपको क्या चाहिए, तो बोलते कंटेंटमेंट सबसे ज़्यादा चाहिए. आई एम अ कंटेंटेड पर्सन and I thank you all for it. While I was speaking, we crossed a landmark today, and it's 4.5 million accounts. We just crossed it. So, as you can see, we are 58 accounts more than, and we were about 2,000 accounts less when we started. So that's quite a figure. Thank you.